Emma never planned to meet anyone that night. She was focused on work, managing last-minute details at a charity art event in Seattle. Her life had been quiet for a long time. Too quiet, some would say. After years of trying to rebuild herself from past disappointments, she had decided to stop chasing love and start chasing purpose. But fate, as it often does, had a different plan. The event was nearly over when she met him, Ryan Carter. He was tall, confident, the kind of man who made every introduction feel meaningful. He had that calm, grounding energy that drew people in without trying too hard. When he approached her table, she was packing up donation forms, her hair loosely tied back, face tired but warm. "You're Emma, right? The one behind this whole thing?" he asked with a friendly smile. She nodded, a bit surprised that he knew her name. "Yes, guilty. You must be one of our sponsors. Thank you for being here." Ryan laughed softly. "I should be thanking you. This event's incredible. People like you make the city feel alive again." It was a simple compliment, but it lingered. Something about the way he said it, genuine, without agenda, made her look at him differently. That night they spoke for nearly an hour, long after most guests had left. They talked about art, travel, and how hard it was to find peace in a busy world. Emma didn't feel like she was meeting someone new. It felt like she was remembering someone familiar. When Ryan offered to help her load the remaining boxes into her car, she tried to decline politely, but he insisted. "At least let me make sure you don't drop a painting on yourself," he joked. His kindness was easy, natural. As they worked side by side, laughter slipped out between them, soft, effortless laughter that neither had felt in a long time. That night ended with a quiet moment in the parking lot. Rain began to fall, light and cold. Ryan stood beside her car door and said, "Maybe next time we can talk when there's no fundraiser between us." She smiled, hiding her nerves. "Next time." "Yeah," he said, eyes steady on hers. "I think I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, next time became many times. They started seeing each other often, coffee on rainy mornings, walks through Pike Place Market, and long drives where neither of them cared where they ended up. Ryan was the kind of man who noticed small things. He remembered that Emma preferred her coffee with oat milk, that she always carried a notebook in her bag, that she hummed softly when she was thinking. He made her feel seen, something she hadn't felt in years. Emma's friends noticed the change in her. She was lighter, smiling more, staying out later. Ryan became a steady presence, reliable, charming, respectful. He didn't rush things. He let her feel safe. And for someone like Emma, who had learned to build walls around her heart, that safety meant everything. Their connection deepened quickly. It wasn't the kind of love that arrived with fireworks. It was the quiet kind, steady, growing like warmth, spreading slowly through cold hands. Ryan often said things that stayed with her for days. "You make everything calmer," he once told her while driving home from the lake. "The world feels softer when you're around." She laughed when he said that, but she felt it too. Around him, life felt lighter. Still, even during their happiest moments, small shadows appeared, things Emma tried not to see. Ryan was always busy. His phone buzzed constantly, sometimes late into the night. He would glance at it, smile faintly, and put it down without saying much. When she asked about it, he would simply say, "Work stuff, nothing important." At first, she believed him. After all, he was successful. He ran a community development firm, managed multiple projects, and seemed to know everyone in the city. His life was naturally hectic. But slowly, small details began to feel off. He would disappear for meetings that lasted too long. His texts would grow shorter on certain weekends. Once, when they were having dinner, he stepped outside for a phone call that lasted 15 minutes. When he came back, he was quieter, distracted. Emma noticed, but she didn't ask. She didn't want to seem suspicious or ruin something that finally felt right. One evening, while helping him clean up after dinner at his apartment, she accidentally saw a message flash across his phone screen. It wasn't shocking, but it wasn't harmless either. It read, "Thanks for tonight. You always know how to make us feel special." The message came from someone named Lila. Emma froze. Her heart didn't shatter. It just went still. She put the phone down and pretended she hadn't seen anything. She told herself there must be an explanation. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe it was innocent. She wanted to believe that. After all, Ryan wasn't the kind of man who lied, was he? But that night, as they sat together watching an old movie, Emma couldn't focus. Every laugh, every touch felt slightly different now. Uncertain, cautious. She smiled when he looked at her, but inside, a quiet ache began to bloom. Over the next few days, that ache grew heavier. She found herself replaying every late-night text he ignored, every meeting that went on too long, every glance he gave his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. Still, she said nothing. Instead, she buried herself in work, hoping the feeling would fade. Ryan noticed her distance and tried to fix it the only way he knew how, through small gestures. He brought her flowers, surprised her with dinner, left little notes on her desk. "Don't overthink life," one note said. "Just feel it." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel it again, that ease, that trust. But now everything had weight. Every word carried a question she was too afraid to ask. One rainy Sunday morning, they were sitting at a cafe downtown. Ryan was reading the paper, and Emma watched him. Really watched him. He looked calm, content, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside her. And in that moment, she realized something painful. The man sitting across from her. It's both everything she wanted and everything she was afraid to lose. She didn't know which truth hurt more. The possibility that he had someone else, or that she might still love him even if he did. As she stared out the window at the rain, her reflection blurred with the city lights. She whispered to herself, "Please don't let this be another heartbreak." Ryan looked up and smiled at her, not hearing the words. "What did you say?" She forced a smile. "Nothing. Just thinking about how perfect this feels." And it did, at least for now. But deep down, Emma knew. The cracks had already begun to form, quiet and invisible, waiting for the moment when love would have to face the truth hiding behind that perfect smile. Emma didn't confront Ryan right away. She needed time to understand, time to breathe, time to make sense of what she had seen. The message from Leela kept replaying in her mind like a soft echo she couldn't turn off. She tried to convince herself it didn't mean anything, that she was overthinking, but her heart wouldn't believe her mind. Something inside her had shifted. For the next few days, she became quieter. Ryan noticed it. "You've been distant lately," he said one evening while they were cooking dinner together. His tone was gentle, but she could feel the tension underneath. "I'm just tired," she replied with a weak smile. "Work's been a lot." He looked at her for a long moment, as if searching for truth in her eyes. But then he nodded and let it go. That was Ryan's way. He never pushed too hard. He gave space when something felt heavy, and that was one of the reasons she had fallen for him. But now that same space made her feel like he was slipping further away. A week later, her doubts grew stronger. Ryan had gone to Portland for what he called a client meeting. He texted her at night. Short messages, simple words, busy day. "Miss you?" or "talk tomorrow. Promise." Normally, she would have smiled at those texts. Now they felt hollow. On the third night of his trip, she couldn't sleep. Something told her that the truth was hiding in plain sight, and she needed to face it. The next morning, she called him. He answered quickly, voice calm but distracted. "Hey, Em, I was just about to call you." She hesitated. "Where are you right now?" "Still in Portland?" "Meetings went late," he said. And she could hear the faint sound of laughter in the background, women's voices. She didn't ask about it then. She just said goodnight and hung up. Afterward, she sat in silence, staring at her phone, realizing she had reached a point where silence hurt more than the truth could. When Ryan returned 2 days later, she asked him to meet her at their favorite cafe by the waterfront. It was early evening, and the air smelled like salt and rain. They sat across from each other, the sound of the waves blending with the quiet clinking of coffee cups. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice steady but fragile, "I need to ask you something." He looked up, eyes cautious. "Okay." She took a deep breath. How many people do you make feel special? The question hung in the air like a weight neither of them could carry. Ryan's eyes dropped to the table. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with a heavy sigh, he leaned back in his chair. Emma, it's not what you think. She waited, heart pounding. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm not seeing anyone else the way I see you. But I have. Connections. People who need me. I try to help to be there for them. Maybe I've stretched myself too thin. Kemma frowned. Connections. You mean other women? He nodded slowly. Yes, but not like that. They're friends, clients, people I've met through work. They come to me when they're struggling and I can't turn them away. It's not romantic, at least. It's not supposed to be. She wanted to believe him, but something about his words felt too careful, too practiced. Then why the message? She asked quietly. The one from Leela, thanks for tonight. You always know how to make us feel special. What was that about? Ryan looked away, guilt flickering across his face. Lila runs a community group one fund. I had dinner with her and some of the team. They were having a tough week and I tried to lift their spirits. That's all it was. Then why didn't you tell me? She pressed. Because, he said softly, I knew you'd misunderstand. I didn't want to hurt you with details that didn't matter. Emma leaned back, feeling her chest tighten. But they do matter. Because now I don't know which parts of our life are real. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Emma, listen. You're the one who grounds me. You're the reason I can even give so much to others. I need to keep them happy so I can keep you happy too. You don't understand how much I balance. She pulled her hand away. You need 5 others to keep me happy, she asked, her voice trembling. He hesitated before answering. It's not like that, he said softly. Each of them. They're part of my life. If I let them fall apart, everything else collapses, including me. I thought you'd want the best version of me, even if it means sharing pieces of me. His words were sincere, but they pierced deeper than he realized. Emma stared at him, trying to see the man she had fallen for in that explanation. She wanted to find warmth there, something that made sense. But all she saw was someone trying to fix too many things at once. Breaking the one thing that mattered most in the process, she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded quietly. I see, she said. You're saving everyone. Just not yourself. Ryan's shoulders dropped. I'm trying to do the right thing. I know, she whispered. But maybe that's the problem. They sat in silence for a long time. The cafe grew louder, the world moving on around them while their conversation fell apart. Finally, Emma stood. I need some time, she said. I need to figure out if I can live with this. He didn't stop her. He just nodded, his eyes full of regret. I'll wait, he said softly, no matter how long it takes. That night, Emma walked along the waterfront, the wind brushing through her hair. The lights of the city shimmered across the water, distant and cold. She thought about Ryan's words about balance, kindness, the price of being needed by too many. She realized that sometimes love doesn't disappear because of lies or betrayal. Sometimes it fades quietly, lost between what's said and what's left unsaid. Days turned into weeks. Ryan kept trying small texts, gentle reminders, moments of normalcy, but something had changed between them. Emma answered politely, but her heart stayed guarded. She started going out alone again, walks by the lake, dinners with friends, painting in her studio. She was searching for herself again. The version of Emma that existed before Ryan's world tangled with hers. But every night, when she lay in bed, she still thought of him, his laugh, his calm voice, his hand brushing hers in crowded places. She missed him, but she also missed peace, and she knew she couldn't have both. One evening, she wrote a note in her journal. Love isn't about how much someone gives you. It's about whether they can give you all of themselves without losing who they are. She closed the book and whispered into the quiet room. I just wanted one heart, not 6. And somewhere across the city, Ryan sat alone in his apartment staring at his phone, wondering how love so strong could still slip away, not through betrayal, but through the quiet truth that sometimes even love can't hold everything together. The days after that conversation moved slowly for Emma, like time itself had turned heavy. Ryan kept trying to reach out, soft messages, small gifts, casual invitations, but something inside her had gone quiet. She wasn't angry anymore. She was just tired. Tired of wondering where she stood, tired of sharing a man who didn't even realize how divided he had become. She still loved him that much, she couldn't deny. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It lingers like a scent that refuses to fade. But what she felt now wasn't peace. It was confusion wrapped in tenderness. She didn't know if she missed him or the idea of what they could have been. Ryan, on his end, thought he could fix things with effort. He started showing up at her door unannounced, bringing flowers, suggesting trips, trying to remind her of their happier days. And for brief moments, it worked. When they were together, laughing over old stories or walking through the park, things almost felt normal again. But then his phone would ring or he'd get that faraway look in his eyes, and reality would return like a cold wind. Emma began to notice patterns. How he always said yes to everyone. How he couldn't refuse a favor. How he constantly carried the weight of other people's problems. His kindness, the thing that once drew her to him, now felt like the very thing tearing them apart. One Friday evening, Ryan invited her to an event his company was sponsoring, a business dinner mixed with charity. He said it would mean a lot if she came, and she agreed, wanting to understand him better. Maybe, she told herself, seeing his world would help her see what he was trying to protect. The event was held in a beautiful rooftop hall overlooking downtown Seattle. The air was filled with polite laughter, music, and the soft clinking of glasses. Ryan was in his element, confident, charming, surrounded by people who seemed to admire him deeply. Emma watched him from a distance for a while, noticing how effortlessly he connected with everyone. But as the evening went on, she started recognizing faces. There was Lila, the woman whose message she had seen months ago, and two others who spoke to Ryan with an ease that made Emma's stomach twist. They weren't just colleagues. Their eyes carried warmth, familiarity, something unspoken when Ryan introduced them. Each woman greeted Emma kindly, but the air between them held quiet tension. One of them said, "Ryan always talks about you. You must be really special to him." Emma smiled politely, but her chest tightened. She couldn't help but think how many of them had heard those same words before. As the night went on, she observed how Ryan spread himself thin, moving from group to group. Offering comfort, encouragement, small compliments that made people light up. He was sincere in all of it, but that sincerity was scattered, given away in too many directions. Emma realized that Ryan didn't belong to anyone, not out of deceit, but because he belonged to everyone. Near the end of the evening, she stepped out onto the terrace for air. The city lights shimmered below, and the cool wind brushed her face. A moment later, Ryan joined her. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay? You've been quiet tonight?" "I'm fine," she said, still staring at the skyline. "Just thinking." He smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "You always think too much." "Maybe," she replied. "But I see too much too." Ryan frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She turned to face him, her eyes clear and calm. "I saw how they look at you, Ryan. I saw how you look back. You make everyone feel like they're the only one. You give too much of yourself to everyone, and now there's nothing left for me." He took a slow breath. "That's not true. You're the one I come home to, but you don't really come home, do you?" She said quietly. "You're everywhere and nowhere at the same time." He didn't answer. The silence between them said enough. That night, Emma went home early. Ryan offered to drive her, but she refused. She needed space, real space, not just physical distance. When she got home, she sat on her couch, still wearing the dress she had worn to the event. The city lights outside flickered through her window, and she let the truth settle in. She loved him deeply. But love wasn't enough when it had to be shared with 5 others. Over the next few weeks, she tried to make peace with it. She told herself that maybe love looked different for everyone. Maybe some people needed to love in fragments. She tried to adjust to accept his divided world. But her spirit couldn't rest. Every time his phone buzzed, she flinched. Every time he left the room to answer a call, she wondered who was on the other end. It wasn't jealousy anymore. It was exhaustion, the constant effort of pretending that. Half a heart was enough. Ryan felt the distance but didn't know how to bridge it. "Emma, I'm doing everything I can," he told her one night. "I'm trying to be better." She looked at him, her eyes soft but tired. "That's the problem, Ryan. You're trying to be everything for everyone. You don't even know who you are when you're not saving someone." He didn't have an answer. He just sat beside her, silent, defeated. One Sunday, she drove back to the lake where they used to go in the beginning, their place of calm. The water was still, the air heavy with memory. She sat by the shore, thinking about the first time he told her she made everything feel complete. Now she understood that it wasn't her job to complete anyone. It was hers to feel whole on her own. When she returned to the city that evening, she felt lighter, though her heart still ached. She hadn't decided to leave yet, but she knew she couldn't stay the same. Later that week, Ryan invited her over for dinner. He tried to make it special. Candles, her favorite meal, music playing softly in the background. He looked hopeful, almost nervous. "Let's start fresh," he said quietly. She smiled sadly. "Ryan, you can't start fresh when your heart is still crowded." He looked confused, like he wanted to argue but didn't know how. She stood and walked to the window, staring out at the rain. "You keep giving away pieces of yourself," she said softly, "and I can't keep collecting what's left." Oh, that night, she didn't end things. She simply said, "I need to find peace, even if it's without you." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away gently. "You don't have to understand," she whispered. "Just know that I loved you enough to let go before we destroyed each other." As she left his apartment, she didn't cry. She just walked into the night, the rain falling softly around her. For the first time, she felt the truth settle deep inside. Love shouldn't require sharing pieces of someone who can't stand still. Ryan watched her leave, standing by the window, realizing too late that sometimes love isn't lost in one moment, it slips away slowly, piece by piece, until all that's left are memories of what could have been. And as the door closed behind her, Emma finally felt something she hadn't in months: clarity. The kind that doesn't erase love but finally gives it an ending. Emma knew it was time to face Ryan one last time. She had spent weeks wandering through her thoughts, weighing memories against reality, love against loneliness. The truth had become clear. She couldn't stay in a relationship where she shared his heart with others, even if he never meant to hurt her. This wasn't betrayal in the obvious sense. It was quiet, insidious. And it had slowly eaten away at the bond they had. She arranged to meet him at their favorite cafe by the waterfront. The place where everything had started, the place that held their laughter, their first moments of hope, and the memories that had kept her clinging to him. She arrived early, choosing a table with a clear view of the water, the lights of the city shimmering across the calm waves. When he walked in, she noticed the familiar way he carried himself, tall, confident, and yet slightly vulnerable when he saw her waiting. Ryan approached with a hesitant smile. "Emma," he said softly, sitting across from her. "It's good to see you." She nodded, her expression calm but determined. "Ryan, we need to talk." He nodded, as though he had been expecting this. "I know. I've been thinking about us. About everything." Kima took a deep breath. "I've been thinking too. And I've realized something important. Something I should have realized sooner. Love isn't about fractions. I can't love someone with pieces of themselves missing, shared with others. Not even if they mean well." Ryan's face softened, regret flickering in his eyes. "Emma, I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to be everything for everyone. I thought if I could hold it all together, I could be the man you deserve." "But Ryan," she said, her voice steady in trying to hold everything together, "you lost the one thing that mattered most. You lost yourself. And in the process, you couldn't be fully with me." He looked down at the table, his hands clasped tightly together. "I thought I was giving you the best version of me. I didn't realize it would hurt so much." Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. She placed it in front of him. "Here," she said softly. "This is for you." He opened it carefully and found a silver heart-shaped keychain, split into two halves. One half was for him, the other for her. She explained, "You gave me half of your heart, Ryan. I'm returning it. Because I can't build forever on fractions." Ryan's eyes filled with emotion, a mix of sadness and understanding. "Emma, He struggled to find words and finally whispered, "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "I just want you to understand. I loved you, truly. But I can't live in a world where love is shared too thinly to be real." He nodded slowly, his voice trembling. "I understand. I really do. And I'm sorry. I wish I could have done better." They sat in silence for a long moment, letting the water's reflection and the gentle hum of the cafe fill the space between them. Emma realized that this moment wasn't about anger or blame. It was about acceptance. They had loved each other deeply and honestly. But love alone wasn't enough when the heart was divided. "I forgive you, Ryan," she said softly, "and I hope you find a way to be whole again. Not for me, not for them, but for yourself." He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Thank you, Emma. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll take it." She stood, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder. "You'll always have a place in me," she said gently. "And maybe one day, when you're ready, you'll understand what it means to love fully, without pieces missing." He nodded, watching her walk toward the door. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The decision had been made. For the first time in months, she felt the weight lifting from her shoulders. The ache in her chest softened, replaced by a quiet clarity she hadn't felt in a long time. Outside, the rain had started to fall, light and cleansing. Emma let it soak her hair and clothes, feeling alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Each step she took was deliberate, steady, moving her further from the past and closer to herself. Ryan stayed behind, watching her disappear into the city streets. He realized that love wasn't just about giving, it was about knowing when to let go. When to release someone you cherished so they could find their own peace. The lesson was painful, but necessary. He understood now that sometimes holding on too tightly could destroy the very thing you wanted to protect. Emma walked through the streets, the sound of the rain tapping on the pavement like a gentle rhythm. Her heart still carried a twinge of sadness, but it was tempered by strength. She had loved deeply, and in doing so, had learned that self-respect and inner peace were just as important as the love she offered to others. That evening, she returned to her apartment, poured herself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The city lights reflected in the water below. And she thought about Ryan, not with anger, not with longing, but with gratitude. He had taught her about love, kindness, and the complexities of the heart, even if their story couldn't continue. For Ryan, the night was quieter than usual. He sat in his apartment holding the other half of the heart-shaped keychain. The reality of what had been lost settled over him like a heavy blanket. He thought about Emma's words, about forgiveness, about the cost of trying to be everything for everyone. It was a lesson he would carry with him forever. Days passed, and life slowly returned to normal for both of them. Emma focused on her work, her friends, and her own passions. She painted again, walked by the lake, and allowed herself to laugh freely. She discovered that independence and self-love were not just acts of survival, but acts of grace. Ryan, meanwhile, began to reflect on his life and choices. He started setting boundaries, learning to care for others without losing himself. He realized that kindness was valuable only when balanced with self-respect and honesty. The emptiness left by Emma's absence was painful, but it pushed him toward growth he hadn't sought before. Months later, Emma walked along the waterfront alone. She looked out over the same water where she had once shared laughter and love with Ryan. The reflection of the city sparkled on the surface. And for the first time, she felt truly at peace. She knew she had made the right choice. Love had taught her, yes. But it had also reminded her that her happiness could never be built on fragments of someone else's divided heart. She smiled softly. thinking of Ryan not with sadness, but with warmth. Their story had been real, their connection deep, and their lessons invaluable. She had loved, she had learned, and most importantly, she had reclaimed herself. And as she walked away from the waterfront, the rain washing over her like a cleansing balm, she knew that the future was hers to embrace whole, unbroken, and ready for whatever life might bring. It wasn't a bitter ending. It was a release, a goodbye that saved them both, a goodbye that allowed love to be remembered without pain and life to continue with hope. And that, Emma realized, was the most powerful kind of love of all, the one that frees, heals, and grows, even when two hearts must part.